Greetings and welcome to another video tutorial on Unity. This time we're going to create a very simple solar system setup to go over basic manipulation of objects from script, also to show parenting in the editor, and the usefulness of empty game objects. So what we're going to want to have is a sun, so to speak. It's not going to look much like one. We're just going to put a checkerboard texture on it. We're going to have a sun, we're going to have a planet, and a moon for that planet. Everything, of course, is going to rotate on their own axes, and the planet will orbit the sun, and the moon will orbit the planet. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of this, there's two things I want to cover first. First of them is Isrot, as I like to call it. Looking down the list there, Isrot. Identity, scale, rotate, orbit, translate. Now, these aren't quite as important to keep in mind if you're doing everything inside the Unity editor, but you can still get tripped up by these. And what this is the order of operations you need to do in order to have your rotations and such come out correct. So you have to remember, all of these operations, scaling, rotating, translating, are matrix operations. Matrices are not commutative. If you have two matrices, A and B, A times B does not equal B times A. It is not a commutative property like addition or regular multiplication. So scaling something, then rotating it, will give you a different result than if you rotate it and then scale it. So you've got to be aware of these. So identity means you start off with a clean matrix, the identity matrix. You then apply your scale matrix to increase or decrease your size. You then apply your rotate matrix to get it into the proper orientation. Orbit's cheating a little bit. That's actually two operations. An orbit is a translate, then rotate. And then finally, you translate the object to where it needs to be in space. Now, like I said, for the most part in Unity, you don't need to worry about this too much unless you're screwing around with the OpenGL commands. If you're messing around with the OpenGL commands to manually draw things into the scene, you very much need to worry about Isrot here. For the most part in Unity, in the update cycle, if you need to update your object's position and its rotation and its scale, you don't need to worry about the order in which you do that, because Unity does the operations in the proper order when it actually goes to draw your object. The other thing we have to deal with is getting the checkerboard texture, because if we don't actually apply a material to our objects, we just leave them the solid default gray, we won't be able to see them rotate. It's a solid color. If you rotate a solid color, it still looks like a solid color. So we need to have a default texture we can throw in there. Why Unity doesn't come with a default checkerboard texture that's applied to new objects, I'm not really sure, but it's not that hard to create. So I'm going to use GIMP here. I have other tutorials on GIMP, so I'm not going to go over the exact operations I'm doing here. I'm just going to create a 128 by 128 image. I'm going to make sure that I've got a white background there. I'm just going to go ahead and show my grid, snap to my grid, configure my grid, change it so that I've got it, not 1064. So it's split into 4 parts. Grab this tool, my selection tool, and if I can actually get the right tool selected here, it would help. There we go. Paint can, fill that in, copy it, paste it, grab the move tool, drag that over, ta-da, checkerboard texture. Remember to do a Control-E if you've got the newer version of GIMP instead of Control-S, because GIMP now only saves in its native format, and you have to export to every other format. And as you can see, I've actually already done a checker one, going through this before. I'm just going to go ahead and export it, replace it. Alright, so I'm done with GIMP. Close without saving. Hop over to Unity, and let's go ahead and get my material set up. I import a new asset, and all I did, get back up to Unity. All I did was right-click my project area, said import new asset. Of course, you can also come over here to assets and import new asset. So import new asset. Navigate, I saved that in my pictures folder here. So there's my checker texture. Now, if you wanted to actually have these things look more detailed, like actually have it look like an Earth or a moon or a sun, you could, of course, go out and hunt those down. The Earth and the moon, that's actually not our moon. That's one of the other moons in the solar system. Those were taken from NASA, and the sun I just made using difference clouds, transparency, and filtering together some couple of different colors. But I'm just going to leave things as checkers. So we've got our texture. Remember, textures are not materials. We need to create a material. So there's the checker material. And a plain old diffuse. And I'm going to set the tiling up to 5, so that way we get the nice little checkerboard thing there. And of course, this was not designed with spheres in mind, so yeah, it's going to pinch there at the top, but yeah, we'll leave with it. Alright, so we've got our material now. Let's go ahead and get some spheres in here. So game object, create other sphere. Let's center this guy up. And, you know, the sun's big, so I'm going to go ahead and put the scale up to like 5. Create another sphere. Again, zero it out. Let's put it out here on Z10. Scale. Oh, no, not 13. Yeah, that actually looks a little bit big. Let's keep the scale down to 2 for our Earth. And then finally we need our moon. So I'm just going to duplicate that. Actually, Control D, duplicate it, drag it out, and we want our moon nice and small, so 0.5s I think will work good for this. Adjust my editor camera. Now, I think this looks like a good view, so I want my in-game camera to match this. So I'm going to select my main camera. Remember, Control-Shift-F or Align With View will take whatever currently selected object you have and align it to your current editor view, which is awesome for setting up camera shots and or just simply getting objects to line up the way you want them to. Alright, and if I go and look at this in the game, nothing's lit. That's going to be really hard to see. So we'll toss in a couple of point lights here. So let's do point light. And I'm going to turn down its intensity to like 0.5 and increase its range to 20. I'm going to let's toss some 3-point lights in there. Come back over here, look at it, and see. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to take my checker material, and all I'm going to do is just going to drag it from project onto things here in the editor. And now I've got checkers. All right, looks good. Now let's go ahead and deal with our script. So create C#. Now the script's going to be bone dead simple. The point of this isn't so much about learning some new scripting techniques, but just more of how does the scripting interact with things, manipulating objects from script, and parenting objects, like I said earlier. Alright, so I got rotate. Let's hop over here to Visual Studio. Yes, I went to reload. It's going to ask you that every time you modify the project file from within Unity. So that's normal. You just tell it, yes, I want to reload. I'm going to open up my rotate CS script. And really, the only thing I need in here is a rotate speed. So I'm going to say public float rotate speed, because I don't want to have to come back into code to change this. Let's default this to 5. And then what I want to do in the update is I'm going to want to rotate my object. Now in Unity, whenever you want to move, scale, or rotate an object, you want to access its transform, which is a member of the MonoBehavior object. Remember, if you're working in Unity, go to the Unity documentation of MonoBehavior. Read it. I would actually recommend nearly memorizing everything that is in MonoBehavior, because that is your core for manipulating objects in Unity. You've got to be very familiar with what MonoBehavior object has and can do. because that'll help you out a lot in your scripting. But what I want is the transform property. And it just so happens that there is, well, it's already on here because I've been doing this, did a practice run on this before the recording. And rotate around happens to be one of the methods that we can call. It takes an axis that we can rotate around. And so we're going to rotate around the y-axis. So I'm going to say vector 3 dot up and angle. Now I don't want to just say rotate speed in here. I'm going to do so anyways, just so you can see why this is an immensely bad idea. So I'm going to save it. Always remember to save your code. If you don't save it, Unity's not going to see the changes. Come back over here to Unity, hit the play button. All right, it would also help to attach my rotate script. Actually, before I attach it, I think I'm going to go ahead and rename these objects. So right now I've got sphere, sphere, and sphere. So which sphere do I want to modify when I want to modify the big sphere? It's like I got to click on it. It's like, yeah, no. So I'm going to rename the big one. Come on. Rename. Sun. I'm going to call the big one Sun. I'm going to call this one Earth. And I'm going to call this one Moon. Now it's easier for me to select the one that I want from this list here. But I'm going to attach my rotate script. I can either drag it over here or drag it over here. Either way, I can see now I got my rotate script. So rotate, rotate, rotate. Go through and check. All right. Hit the play button. And oh my, it's like just totally spazzy. Not right now. And actually, that's not the reason. Ah, yes. Okay. I remember now why this. So, okay, sorry. Realign. It is rotating normally right now, except for that mysterious little bit right there, which I actually don't have an explanation for. But the part of it is because I am rotating per frame, and that's bad. You don't want to base your movements or your rotation speeds per frame, because what happens if we go to project settings, quality, good, don't sync? Oops, we got a strobe light show. Because, well, now, actually, let me go ahead and bring this back up. Now we're moving at, 4,000 frames per second. Whereas before we were moving at, I think it was 65 frames per second. That's a massive difference there. So we can't do that. Instead, what we want to have happen is we want to base this on, okay, this needs to be degrees per second. So I need to scale that rotate speed by time.delta time. Now I am saying that, okay, I'm assuming that this is 5 degrees per second, because delta time is always going to give me a fraction of a second. So now if I come back in here, and now it rotates properly. Still really fast, so I think like, let's see, select the sun, about a rotate speed of 1. Also notice this weird little bump here is now behaving itself as well, now that we're rotating at more sane speeds. Looks like a speed of 1 works pretty good. So let's go back through and change all of that. Sun to 1, Earth to 1, and Moon to 1. Okay, so we got everybody spinning in place, but we want orbiting. Now, I could manually do this in the code. I could go through and write a script for the Earth and write a script for the Moon and do the Isroth thing and translate and rotate to get the orbiting done correct. Or I can use parenting in Unity. Because remember, when you parent things in the editor, you're saying that, okay, well, if I move the parent, I move the children. If I rotate the parent, I rotate the children. So if I take the Moon and parent it to the Earth, which you do by dragging it on top, then I take the Earth and the Moon and parent them to Sun. Now if I select the Sun and I move it, you notice I move everything. If I select the Earth and move it, I just move the Earth and the Moon. And if I select the Moon by itself, well, yeah, that doesn't affect anything besides the Moon. So now if I run it, now it works better. Now I've actually got orbiting, but there's still some problems. It's a little bit hard to see, especially with the size difference. If I made everything exactly the same size, you would be able to see it a little bit easier. But the Earth is staying in perfect sync with the Sun. It is rotating at the exact same speed the Sun is rotating, but we know that's not how things actually work in the solar system. The Sun rotates at one speed, the Earth rotates at a different speed, and yet orbits the Sun at a different speed still. So how can we do this? And the answer to that is, well, empty game objects. So I'm going to drop in, Control-Shift-N, or I can go to Create, I'm sorry, not that Create, up here, Game Object, Create Empty. Control-Shift-N is my preferred shortcut. I'm going to make this the solar center. So I'm going to make sure this is zeroed, because that is indeed the center of our solar system here. I'm going to call this the solar center, and I'm going to attach the sun to that. Now, if I was to rotate the solar center, I'd still have the same problem, so I don't want to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another empty game object, and I'm going to put that where the sun is. Again, at the center. So I'm going to do sun, new game object, Control-Shift-N. I'm going to say sun center. I'm going to zero this out because that is indeed where the sun is centered at. Now you can also see the importance of keeping things neatly aligned here, at least in the editor. And I'm going to not attach it to the sun, but rather I'm going to attach it to the solar system directly. So now I've got the sun and the sun center. And I'm going to move the Earth from the sun to the sun's center. Now I can attach the rotate script to sun center. It's got its default value of 5, so if we play it now, we can see the sun's doing its nice, slow, stately rotate, and the Earth is totally spazzing out. So let's make this a 1, and the sun should probably rotate nice and slow. Let's make that a 1/4. So now we can see now that the Earth is both spinning and orbiting at a faster speed than what the sun is turning at. Likewise, I can continue to do this same trick for the Earth. I can do a new game object. We'll call this Earth Center. And now I need to make sure this is the same location as the Earth. Now I can, another Unity editor tip, I could come over here, look at the Earth's position, and manually copy that over to the Earth's center. Or I can select the Earth, game object, align view to selected. What that does is it yanks my editor camera and aligns my editor camera to the object that I just selected. Now I can go to Earth Center, and I can tell the Earth Center to align with view. And hey, look at that. It is now completely, perfectly centered on the Earth. So if I pull my editor camera back, I can see now my empty game object is indeed in the center of the Earth. That is very useful when you can't keep things neatly to a grid. You can't always keep things neatly to a grid. So I'm going to put this on the Earth center. Yep, sorry. I'm going to attach it to the sun center. and attach the moon now to the Earth center, sort of like mirroring what we did with the sun there. And I'll just leave it, and I will attach the rotation script. I'm going to leave it at 5, so that way we'll have the moon just sort of completely spazzing out around the Earth. So we got the moon completely spazzing out, the Earth moving along, and we've got everything moving pretty much at different rates. All thanks to the magic of empty game objects. Never underestimate the usefulness of empty game objects to serve as containers for scripts, or to serve as reference points for other objects, or for grouping things together. Now, don't go overboard with them, because you do take a small performance hit for every game object that you have in the scene. It's small. It's not something you really need to worry about too much. But don't go too overboard with the game objects, because it also makes organization a little bit more difficult. And then as a final review, I might want to use this in other scenes. So to create a prefab, I would go to Create, Prefab, Solar System, drag over my solar center, and now I've got everything set up so that I could add this into a new scene. And that concludes this video. See you in another tutorial.